Hi there, I'm Rachel FB, and today I want to share with you some of the tips and advice that I've used on the Rovaniemi 150, this Arctic race that takes place in the north of Finland. So my first advice is take a pulka, take the sled that we call the pulka. In my opinion, it's much better than a backpack, and this for many reasons. First, it's less strenuous on your muscle and tendons. Your body get less worked out using a pulka. The sled is actually lighter to pull in the deep snow mainly. And it's much lighter on the ice, on the lakes and river. It's much faster to have the sled than a backpack. And also, your back doesn't get wet, and so it prevents you from getting cold. And the other thing is that on the sled you have much more space and room to put all the gear you need. Okay, you have more room for your thermoses, for your big down jacket and the big sleeping bag. So I would definitely go for a sled. My next advice is bring along snowshoes. It will really spare you some struggle in the deep snow, if there's any, or if the weather is pretty mild and the snow get kind of mushy washy. It's really helping a lot. The extra weight is nothing compared to the struggle you will have if you don't get snowshoes in this case. Okay, so go for snowshoes. There are some very light models on the market, and I would definitely recommend to take a pair. Something else that is really important to me, and I think especially last year where it's been very, very cold, be extra cautious about your feet, your nose, all your face, and your fingertips. For my feet, I use on the Rovaniemi 150 the Sealskin's waterproof socks and gaiters. So it's been really helpful, and as long as no snow get into my socks from the top, my feet were warm enough all the way. So gaiters and waterproof socks is a good deal. Last year on the 300 I used the 40 below gaiters, the glued on gaiters that I glued on my trainers, and I found them really cool because my feet were warm, really like very warm throughout the 4 days I was there on the trail by minus 25 degrees Celsius. And the only drawback is that you get, but with the sealskins is the same, you can get your feet a bit wet by the internal moisture. So I would recommend to change your socks once a day, and so your feet don't get like all wet and wrinkly. For the shoes, it's a bit difficult. I run on minimalist trainers because I love this kind of feeling with the ground, and I'm very used to that. Some people use boots or heavier shoes. Well, this is really depending on what you are used to, but practice before, really practice ahead, and make sure you can stand long hours in the cold, in the snow with the shoes you're going to use. Now, for the gloves, you know, your fingers are very important. And throughout the race, you really have to check all the time. It's like constant monitoring. Are my fingers cold or not? Because you can get frostbite so easily. It's really something I would emphasize. Concentrate, focus on your fingers. Make sure they are warm all the way. What works really well for me is like multi-layers of gloves. I have a very thin pair that I nearly never take off, and I can do everything with them. So I can, you know, handle my polka, handle all my gear without taking my gloves off. Over that, I have a fold back mitten, and these mittens, I keep them throughout the day when the weather is milder or if the temperature is okay. And I think this is really good because I never get wet or I'm not sweating from, you know, the hand. You don't get any moisture. And I always have a pair of expedition mittens tied to my belt, to the pulka harness, and I can always put my hands in them if I get colder or if the temperatures drop. So that's what I would recommend you to have: a thin pair of gloves, some, like a middle pair, or these fold back mittens, very handy, and the expeditions, the very sub-zero big mittens. Right. Now coming to your face, ears and nose. You need to protect them from the cold and from the variation of temperature throughout the day and night. So I would have a pair of transparent goggles in case of wind or strong blizzard. You need a baklava to protect your hair and all your face. Hat, I have always like one or two hat, different one for different temperature, and a buff that I put on top of my nose. This is the most convenient without having to buy too much gear. Another tip is always bring enough clothes to keep you warm. I would always have a big down jacket, and I've also have these over boots, because if I have to wait for the rescue to come, or if I have to wait longer or rest at any places, or the temperature suddenly drops, or I don't know, something happened to my shoes, I think it would be so stupid not to have the adequate gear to keep me warm and safe. So think of this and always have enough gear that suits you when you get cold. Okay, we are all different. We have all different sensibility towards the cold. I'm very sensitive to the cold, so I always have enough gear to keep me warm. Okay, now about your bottles and thermoses. I would insulate them all. Okay, you can buy these covers, or you can use socks that you put on top of your bottles to keep them from freezing. Very important. I will also use the bottles with large caps instead of the smaller one, because they are more handy to use with your gloves on. You don't have to take gloves off to open the cap or the top of your bottle. And so that's another advice. Bring along enough solid food. You will need a lot of calories. It's just amazing how much calorie we spend during a race like this at that kind of temperature. So bring enough and think fat, think protein. That's what your body needs. It really, really needs a lot. So that's always what I'm thinking: fat and protein. My body needs fat and protein, and that keeps you going. I would also wear the bars I plan to eat on me at all time. Like if I plan to eat in a 1 hour, in 30 minutes, I always have like 1, 2, or 3 bars or the food I'm gonna eat on me. So it keeps it at body temperature and it's not frozen when I want to chew on it. Also about your energy drinks, keep them on you at all times, otherwise they will freeze definitely. The energy powder in the drink make it freeze much quicker. So energy bottles, energy drinks on you at all time. Also make sure your bottles and your camel bag don't leak. That's the worst case scenario. Imagine you have all your stuff frozen, or your camel bag is leaking in your back, and then it's really, really bad. Some people had to give up last year because that's what happened to them, and everything was first soaked and then frozen on them, and they got hypothermia. So really be careful with this. But drink enough, because the cold dehydrates you very quickly. You better drink on a very regular basis all throughout the race. It's like in any race actually, but it's even more important because with the cold you don't feel it, and still you need to drink. One other tip is never be cold. You should absolutely prevent from being cold, and you need to keep your body at the proper temperature all the way through. It's, as I said, for your finger, it's constant monitoring. It's like, am I gonna be too warm and there's a risk of sweating, or am I getting cold and then my body needs to work too much to fight against the cold? So I would say no sweating and don't get cold. Don't ask your body to fight against element. It has already a lot to do. Okay, so always be like, okay, I take off one layer, I add on one layer. The night is coming, I put on another jacket. Okay, don't wait till you get cold because then it's too late. And it takes so much energy for your body to warm up. You better keep it at the proper temperature as much as possible all the way through. Now about the checkpoints. On the Rovaniemi 150, you'll get water at each checkpoint. And on most of them, you also get warm water. So, except if you want to cook, you probably won't need to bring along a stove. But if you plan to stop and cook, I would then recommend that you bring along a little stove and the adequate fuel that stands the cold. So you can cook wherever you want, whether it's at the checkpoint or elsewhere on the trail. In my opinion, the route is very well marked. But not everyone thinks the same, and I've heard that some people complain that they got lost on the Rovaniemi 150. I'm not talking of the 300 here, okay? It's on the 150. So if you want to make sure I don't get lost, bring along a GPS with the route on it, and so you'll be safe all the way. And it's gonna be easier, mostly when it gets dark on the river, on the lakes, and if suddenly there's snow or if there's fog and blizzard, if you have the GPS with the route on it, then you're safe. You don't have to look, up to find the markings. And last advice, don't hurry, don't rush. You have plenty of time to do your 150k, okay? You really have the time. And just be steady, go your own pace, and you're gonna make it. So I hope my tips are going to help you. And if you have any more things you would like to know, just post a comment, ask me a question. I'll be really pleased to help you. For me, it's a fantastic race. I really enjoyed it. I won't be back this year because I've done it twice and I have another plan. But honestly, it's a race I really recommend. Have a lot of fun, keep training, and enjoy the winter season. Bye!